put off by how long this video is, don't worry. I tend to jam-pack my videos with as much content, as many details as I possibly can, and I try to talk pretty fast. So while the video is a bit on the long side, I don't repeat myself, and I get into a lot of details about the subject that, pretty much anything that I feel I can comment on and that I think you might find interesting. If the video is simply too long for you, I did record a shorter version, and the link is in the description box. Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, 3D. As with the first one, we have several different plots. The arrogant gambler Johnny tries to beat Senator Rourke at cards. Yes, we have several games of poker being played. You knew it had to come to this sooner or later, with all the, various male stereotyping and activity. Sooner or later, people, game of poker, yeah. And yeah, I think that's about what I should say about that one. And we meet a very different Dwight, a pre-surgery, so now played by Josh Brolin Dwight, and Clive Owen was perfect for the post-surgery Dwight. Josh Brolin is perfect for the pre-surgery Dwight. He is, yeah, he's a very different character from the one we met in the first movie. He is very restrained. He tells himself, I must not let the beast out. And yeah, I think that's about what I should say about that one. And his attempts to try to stay in control are tested when Ava, a woman who broke his heart, when she comes back into his life, and she claims to be in great danger from her rich husband and his huge bodyguard, Manute. And then we have Nancy wanting to avenge the only man she's ever loved. And this is two of the three stories here are from, haven't already come out as comic books. So yeah, that's really cool. Watching this, I've read all the published comics. I still, yeah, two of the major stories. Even, the character of Johnny was created specifically for this. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It's not, they're not as good. I will say the Johnny one is pretty good. There are some really good elements to it. It has those little, quirks and these twists, bits of twisted humor that, it's very typical Sin City. It really works. The Nancy story, it's not Alba. It really isn't. She's actually not bad. And there are elements of it that I like, but ultimately there's not enough meat on the bone, really, with that one. Now, the
some of the stories here are, you know, yeah, the order of, you know, chronologically speaking, the stories are out of order, the system is out of order. Now, Sin City is very much about, you know, righting wrongs with tragic ends and some tragic beginnings as well. With this, I of course have to talk about, you know, we lost Brittany Murphy, and yeah, it's, you know, she was solid in the first one. She was, what I mean, pretty much everyone in these two movies is perfectly cast, but she really, yeah, she was spot on. And Michael Clarke Duncan, you know, the man was minute. It was pretty much, yeah. I will say Dennis Haysbert does really, really well at this. Anyway, so the you know, the characters are very much anti-heroes, hard and lonely people, and this very much uses gender stereotyping. The women are tough warriors slash prostitutes, you know, femme fatales, and yeah, there's this thing of basically the actually, yeah, I should just proceed into the male protagonists are varying degrees of bastards, and they use force if necessary, although they may not like to do so, and they fight to win the respect of women, and they respect and try to protect women, you know, the male protagonists, whereas the villains are very much the opposite of that. And the men are very quick to call themselves failures. They are in love or, you know, entranced by women, sometimes have to struggle to maintain their self-respect. There's a lot of passionate past romances. There's very much revenge porn. Cops, clergy, and politicians are corrupt and useless at worst, and criminal and downright harmful in the, yeah. I think you get where I'm going with that. The rich are just spoiled, just, yeah, think they own everything, think they can do just anything. Very much hopeless in extreme situations with lives at stake. Some limited dialogue, some repeating, you know, the same lines and such, and also in the narration. Now this gains some from, you know, any Sin City story gains from the stories being separate, means that the leads can actually die, and it's very unpredictable. This is especially true of new characters, and we see a little bit more of Goldie. A lot of characters come back, a lot of familiar faces, whether you've, you know, read the comics or have just watched the first movie. Yeah, a lot of familiar faces, and it's not actually, I was a little worried that it would be like too loaded, but yeah, it really isn't. They all fit in, and excuse me, there might be some people that you can't completely place. That's fine. If, you know, if you go through the movie and you don't realize you've seen that character before just in this other, that's perfectly all right. Yeah, you could go into this not having watched the first one, and indeed, you know, it's like with the comics. You can take in any one of these stories without knowing the other ones. Now, the Senator Rourke is the bad guy in 2 of these stories, and the more Powers Booth, the better. He is such a great bad guy, and the bad guys in these stories, you just hate. You want to see these people suffer, and this is something that this was also something that the first one did really well, and the comics do really well, and this one again. I mean, yeah, the senator in this one just there's no too much of Powers Booth, just plain and simple. Now, like the first one, this does pretty good at introducing us to the protagonists of the different stories fairly early on. This one, basically, you see a little bit of each story from very early on. Like the very first couple of scenes, we see that Nancy's now an alcoholic, and Johnny is really good with like gambling and such. And then we meet Dwight, and we get, the Dame to Kill For story. So when we, yeah, you recognize these people as far as, and in fact, this is, with a lot of sequels, you get, like, they do the thing that was done for a little bit in, like, the first one gets, way more in this one. There's a lot of Miho, stuff. I mean, not a lot of screen time necessarily, but she uses that screen time to do a lot of damage. And Jessica Alba does a lot of dancing in this, like several separate dances. Yeah, I think that is about what I should say about that. Now, I think I spotted Lady Gaga, and I mean, it's this. I don't really have an opinion on her one way or the other particularly, but it is, it takes us a second for you to realize, seeing her like without makeup or with very little makeup, but I think I spotted her. She fits in quite fine. Whenever something like that gets brought up, it's like, is it really going to clash with she fits in just fine. And, in general, pretty much every major role in this, pretty much any character that has a name in this. As with the first one, there's actually tremendous talent, behind every name, and yeah, you recognize these people from, there wasn't a single character with a name in this that I hadn't seen in something else. There was one or two who was like, wait, oh, right. And they bring their talent to it. It's, Ray Liotta is just, I mean, yeah, absolutely perfect. I really couldn't have, just absolutely perfect. And it's let's see, we don't get more Schlub and Clump. I kind of missed them. I thought, and they were so perfectly cast in the first one as well. Now, for those of you who may not remember, or like they're the comic relief bumbling duo, low-level killers with, as Hartigan puts it, delusions of eloquence. I love these guys. They're so much fun. We do see some of Mob Boss Valenquist, and Stacy Keach is, quite perfect for that. My friend Kermit had pointed out, he looks like the Butterball Xenobite. Yeah, Ava Green is absolutely perfect for the role of Ava. It's it's hard to talk a lot about her without giving anything away, but she absolutely embodies what she is supposed to be. And yeah, she's naked for pretty much all of her on-screen time. And when you see her swimming, it's just amazing looking. And not only because she's naked and hot, but just, yeah, the visual of it. Now, this is also a very different Gale that we meet, one very much in love with Dwight. Now, the 3D is quite good. At first I was worried about, there's this thing of if the film is too dark, then 3D often doesn't work because I don't remember the exact explanation, but something like it makes it darker so it's harder to tell. But I don't know, maybe it's because there is also a lot of white in this. It's this nice stark black and white, and then with, you know, splashes of color that really highlight. Miller, when he realized what Rodriguez was doing with, you know, color in the first film, he said, "You're using it as a weapon," and that's very much the case here. Whenever you see something you recognize it, yeah, and it's, but yeah, it's quite good 3D. It, you know, it adds some depth. It works. It's not distracting, but yeah, it looks quite good, especially like action scenes and such. Now, this flows fairly nicely between the different stories. And I suppose, so yeah, the first one was one of the most satisfying comic book to movie adaptations, and in part it's because the stories are standalone comics. You pick any up, you read that one, you can read only that one, you can read all of them. It just adds to an overall image. Regardless of how many of them you read, they'll just further inform, but you can read just one and follow that one story perfectly fine. And they're recent stories, so not a lot has to be changed to fit, social norms and the like. The stories are not too short to where a theater audience wouldn't necessarily have enough time to get into them, but they're also not so long that when you do it like this, when you take 3 overall stories and put them together into one movie, that works out quite nicely as far as feature length goes. And then you have the two people making it, a fan and the creator of the comics, and both of these immensely talented people. Miller's political and that notwithstanding, he does possess a lot of talent. Now, like with the first one, this is film. I suppose I should just briefly say, this one does follow Dame the way the first one followed the 3 stories of that one, basically frame by frame. There's not really anything that's cut out. very few bits, at least, and very few lines are cut out or altered or the like. And frankly, I can imagine that a lot is added back in, director's cut. But yeah, no major aspects are changed. Now, it's a frame by frame. Basically they used the comic frames as a shot list isn't the word, but I think you get my basic gist. Very visually compelling. You have these Venetian blinds and shadows and darkness, and great use of negative space where you see a big puddle of blood or a lot of shadow or the like, used very well. Great contrasts. Now, the genre is noir / neo-noir with a shot of adrenaline. It's one of Rodriguez's best because, both of these are. The first one especially, in part because he didn't really write, but focused on the visuals, which is very much a strength of his. And he gets to work just within the frames that Frank Miller drew, and then, zoom or point the camera to reach that frame and stage the action within that frame. And these were both filmed in a big chroma key room with sets and the like done with CG, and it puts you right there in Sin City, which doesn't really exist. It's it's in Frank Miller's pen and our mind, and the only way to really do justice is with CG. And it of course gives a lot of flexibility to to change things along the way, and it allows for actor schedules to be flexible. A lot of the actors on the first one, actors who had scenes together might not have met, and it was just them talking. They were shot separately and then put together in editing. And it's very much that Rodriguez can create the film in part with effects and in editing, and again, he has great instincts for that. And they would do long takes, so actors could focus purely on the acting once they got used to the whole green screen thing, and they would warm up and wind down on camera. Now, the atmosphere is very strong with silhouettes, and just it's very gritty, and you can practically smell Sin City, feel the wind of it on your face. There's a lot of blood, brutal gore, violent and disturbing content, and because a lot of it is done like in shadow or with the white blood and such, some of it is made worse because our mind makes it even worse like that. Now, it's very much has themes of trust being dangerous, and there's conspiracy and plotting. The city's an ugly, nasty place. There's some very cartoon aspects, such as I've already mentioned Miho, and when limbs get cut off and such. It can, yeah. Now, we get a lot of twisted sense of humor of both Rodriguez and Frank Miller. There's a lot of tension. The score is this great, smooth rock jazz kind of thing. Not sure it's quite as good as that of the first one, but definitely good. The characters will pine for the good old days, you know, with the cars and the music of that time. There's a lot of plot to even a single story. The protagonist wax poetic. With a few words, the scene is set, or you know, they paint a picture, they set up the background, the relationships of the people. We have a lot of dark, rainy, stormy nights. And I suppose now the various plots are often variations on a theme, and they will have some characters and locations in common. And within the same story, there'll be recurring motifs and themes. Now, we have gunfights and, you know, melee fighting, chases on foot or in vehicles. Very nicely choreographed action. Now, this has gotten a lot of criticisms, and I want to try to address some of them. This has been called tedious. I don't really think so. I will say that not everything has as strong of an effect as it probably was meant to. And let's see. Yeah, and some have said that Eva Green, you know, whenever she isn't on screen, it really, definitely it is. Many of the best moments of the movie are when she's on screen, but I wouldn't say that it's completely without. It's still good. Now, I suppose I will say that the movie is only an hour and 37 minutes, not counting the end credits, where the first one was like 2 hours. So you can really tell, and again, with there being 3 stories in both of these, yeah, some have called it rushed. I don't know. I mean, possibly. I don't think that. I think if they had ditched the Nancy story and just given that time to the Johnny story, so it would just have been those 2 major stories, I think that would have been really good. Now, let's see. This is very similar to the first one. It's not quite as good, but if you go in expecting more or less the same as the first one, yeah, this does. I don't think that it's too similar either. It does things that the first one didn't. If nothing else, it does some visual tricks that certainly weren't in the first one. Again, the swimming is, that's one example, rather. Now, I suppose that more or less covers it. One good thing about these two movies also is, you know, the egos don't take over. None of the actors get like more screen time than the character should have just because they're, you know, such and such big name or the like. The trailers do give a little much away, you know, maybe, excuse me, if you go into this not knowing, excuse me, the comic A Dame to Kill For, yeah, try not to watch the spoilers, try not to, you know, read too many reviews, because a lot of them also give away some things, but yeah. Now, I suppose that I may not have said, but the Nancy we see here is also very different from the one we met in the first film. Now, I think that more or less covers it. Christopher Lloyd appears in this, and he is so much fun. I don't want to give anything away, just, yeah, be on the lookout for him. He's, yeah, I love that, you know, they get to, and it's so much better than, you know, his role in Piranha 3DD. That one, I mean, you have Christopher Lloyd and you waste him like that. Just, yeah, give him something to do. The man is still really funny. This one lets him be funny. And it has that really dark, twisted Frank Miller comedy, you know, sense of humor to it, yeah. Now, I think that more or less covers it. Yeah, to some extent in this one, you don't get as much of a handle on characters and character relationships. And I mean, one thing that some have said is that it's essentially just filmed comic book frames more than, you know, an overall narrative. I mean, Rodriguez calls the first one the anti-movie, or something along those lines. And it's this thing of, he's not making a movie of a comic book, he's turning a movie into a comic book, kind of. Yeah, and in the first one he really nailed it, and I think in this one just isn't quite as, I don't know, maybe it's in too much of a hurry. It definitely isn't the actors. They are totally game. I mean, the returning cast members, Rosario Dawson as Gale, spot on, and just, she looks like she's having as much fun as in the first one. And, you know, Mickey Rourke as Marv. Yeah, it's definitely not the actors. Yeah, it might just be in a little bit too much of a hurry, and a little too excited about like big set pieces, but not necessarily. I mean, the first one has a lot of set pieces as well, but it also gives you this, you know, there are these small moments in between them and little details that hint at relationships and such. And yeah, and this one just not quite as much.
I've reviewed other parts of this series, the links are in the description box. Please rate and comment, and hey, if you like this video, that subscribe button's just waiting for you to click it.